you don't have to answer more than you want to, but is it just spiders, or are there some other things that you have some significant phobias about that you'd be willing to share?
That is actually my only real major fear. I mean, I have some slight issues with, like heights, but I don't have, it's not a phobia. So I can handle that. And
okay, well, what's the difference there that the spiders would be a phobia, but the fear of heights isn't?
The heights is not a true fear, and I can still do height. It's the thing is the fact that I actually, I had, my son when he was little, he was about 2, my oldest, he fell in as the clinical statements from the doctor, broke his head. And I have a fear of heights from that. And it's not like the fear is consuming, as like I can't stand doing things. I still can get on a plane. I can still do some slight stuff with height situations. But if I see my children on a ladder, I freak out. I don't like it. I have to walk away.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was just due to the trauma of, something that occurred to my little one when he was little. So. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Now, tell me if this would meet the definition of a phobia or not. I always wanted growing up to sort of picture myself as a macho tough guy. And we had a situation, I remember, in school going to the gym for blood donorship day. And I remember they were starting the blood giving process. And so, they put the needle in my arm, and I watched the red move up through the tubing to go to the collection place where they were collecting it. And I was really lucky that I was sitting down, because I almost passed out. And
you're one of
the sight of it. Yeah, but I mean, is that a phobia, or is that something going on there? Because it's like, I can't even deal with medical things that affect my body, or the sight of blood, or when they have, like, they show the operations on TV and stuff. I can't cope with it. It's really crazy. It's just like I can't deal, and so I have to exclude it from my mind. And so, what's that about?
A fear. Almost, it's not quite phobia. Phobia would be like you would have, you would pass out. You would have passed out. You know what I mean? But no, it's a legitimate fear. It's a common fear. More people have this fear than not. So it's pretty legitimate to have. The fact is that it's a high anxiety, high fear, low tolerance situation. I don't know if it would be considered something that would be diagnosed as a phobia, but it would definitely be diagnosed as a legitimate fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It was just such a shock to me, because I just always sort of thought that you can just apply your willpower to work your way through unpleasant things, and I suppose I probably still could, but I mean, I was just amazed at how discomforted and uncomfortable I got with those, and it was I started acting like out of control and irrationally, and it was just so revealing to realize how, you know, how easy it could be for me to just be in a situation where I could lose that control and go into something very unpleasant and just shocking.
Right. And you know what? It is actually very shocking to many to find out a fear that they didn't know that they had until they were exposed to it. And a lot of the times, fears come from a trauma. It doesn't just pop up. And fears come from preconceived ideas and thoughts. So that in itself kind of perpetuates or helps bring along that fear. So,
right.
you know, it can really lead to too many different venues of thoughts. And so what to think about that? Like, what do you think happened to you prior to, what was your experience to blood before, or what had you heard from others talking about when they gave blood, or when they had an injury, or whenever some sort of trauma that caused a lot of bleeding occurred? And all of those things then gives you that idea or underlying, not like fear, but apprehension. And so then whenever it occurs, then whenever it does happen to you and occurs to you, bam, there goes that fear. Now you have that fear. Like I had told a time before in another discussion that we had in one of our talks, was where my fear of spiders came from was, you know, that beautiful fun stuff out on the farm. And one night I was going to bed, and it was a hot summer night, and most nights I would just crawl right under the sheet and climb into bed. But for some reason I decided to pull the bed sheet down the whole way, and there was a quarter-sized 50-cent piece, maybe even a little bit bigger, big brown spider in the center of my bed. And I almost climbed into that. And so, of course, now my brain started to go, well, how many nights was it there? Was it there last night? You know, was it crawling on me? You know, all of these things. And it just kind of grew and brought in that whole fear. And as I got older and things like that, so did the fear of the spider, because then, you know, anytime I would see one, it was like, okay, it would bring me back to that time whenever I found it in my bed. You know, is there one in my bed? Where's it? And all of these different fears, and it would just keep accumulating, causing me to have more and more fear, to the point now that, you know, I get a big plastic spider on my chair at work, and I say sugar, honey, iced tea in a very loud, screaming, screechy voice, and scream and back up.
Right.
And the thing is, in the front of my head, I am thinking rationally. You know, in the front of my head, I am, you know, afterwards, after my reactions, it's like, it's not going to hurt me. I'm acting irrational. You know, this is, you know, it's natural. Spiders are good for you. They get rid of, you know, unwanted bugs in your house, and, you know, all of those things to try to kind of break that fear will not seem to stop the fear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And you know, when it comes to my situation with the blood, you know, one of the things I realized about it, I don't know how much it's related, but like there's something very visceral about it that I can't put into words. And I'm not saying it's always there, but I think a lot of times there's a smell. Like, I don't know if this makes sense, but your own blood has a little smell to it. And, like, that seems to be a big trigger for me.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And, yes, blood does have a smell. You know, it has that coppery, tinny smell to it. You brush your teeth too hard and you taste that tinny taste like you're biting on a penny. that's blood. So, yeah, no, it has a smell, and I can see how that can trigger. Me, that's just fascinating, makes me go, ooh, what is that? And I don't get grossed out at all. Even when it does pertain to me, when I was a teacher as a medical assistant, and we were short on patients while teaching blood draws or shots, I volunteered quite a few times, and as being the teacher, I had to look where they were shooting, and I had to look where they were drawing blood, because I had to instruct them so that they wouldn't, stick the needle through my arm. And doing that, I would watch them poke me. I would watch them put a tube on and fill the tube up, or if it didn't work, instruct them on how to move it a little bit while it's just still in my arm, try to find the vein and things like that. So, I mean, I'm pretty okay with seeing blood. I had an infection on my leg. Oh my goodness! When in early years of teaching, and I was teaching about, I think it was wound care and stuff like that. And 2 days before, or 2 or 3 days before, I had touched the front of my shin off of a hot muffler on a motorcycle, and it had burned a perfectly nice round circle on my shin. Well, I had done some wound care, but it didn't seem to have mattered that much because it still got infected on me. And so in class, I'm like, well, hey, we can, let's talk about wounds, take a look at mine. And I took the bandage off, and it was kind of green.
Ooh.
Good class, guys. Let's talk later. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. And drove myself to the hospital, where I actually had to get IV antibiotics. And they're like, we should admit you. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Just give me the shot. We're good. And I followed up with my doctor 3 days later, and he's like, why are you seeing me? And I'm like, there's no infection here. This is like the best care I've ever seen of a wound in a long time. I'm like, because I'm a medical assistant and I took care of my own leg. That's why. He's like, okay, good job. Go home. But that was my own leg, so I was able to handle those things.
Gotcha. Well, it was, and it's not just my own blood there, because back when we were on the farm, there were situations where we would butcher animals, or our neighbors would butcher animals, and we could, sort of help and be a part of the process. I mean, it was just a regular part of life on the farm. And, I remember thinking, this is a good farm skill to have. This is a good thing to learn. It's just a part of life, and you do it, and you have your animals, and then time comes when you got to do what you got to do, and it's just a part of life. And at one point I thought, wow, maybe that would be, maybe working with the animals might be something that would work out for me. But then I realized I was in a situation or two where we did some butchering, and it was just apart from not being pleasant, there was that sort of irrational thing about it. And it was largely for me triggered, like I said, by the smell, but also by the sight. And it was just extremely visceral. And I was really disappointed in myself, because I wanted to be a good helper around the farm, and I wasn't any good with the crops in the field, and I wasn't any good with the animals, and so I wasn't any good with the equipment, fixing the equipment, and so, there's only, if you're not good at any of those things, how are you gonna be a blessing or a benefit on the farm? It ended up not working out. So.
Thank you so much for being a follower. Feel free to like us and follow us on our channel. This is a really great idea. Just pop out, and it's wonderful that we kind of just come together, and we thank you for listening to us.